Zimbabweans will be going to the polls.
It will be the first election since Robert Mugabe stepped down as president of the country after military intervention.
Many Zimbabweans living in South Africa are optimistic about the future of their country as they prepare to go home and cast their ballots.
Zimbabweans in a celebratory mood. This after the announcement that Mugabe had left the highest office in Zimbabwe. Now, 8 months on, Zimbabweans are ready to continue rebuilding their country without him. Augustine Chabaya has been living in South Africa for 12 years now. The 35-year-old only earns 2,500 a month. Back home in Zimbabwe, he left his wife and 2 children. For him, nothing will stand in his way come election day. Chabaya will be traveling back home on Friday.
Must be a change. Because now we know home is bad. Right now I'm here in South Africa. So I'm supposed to work at home, get a job at home. But it's not easy to come to go to next door.
Many living in South Africa believe these elections will bring the much-awaited change many have been hoping for.
We are planning to go there to Zimbabwe to vote for another candidate to get that seat, because we have been struggling for a long time, but we didn't do anything about it because we didn't have that power.
We think there must be a change in Zimbabwe, and we are also looking forward for a change for the people, and we would like people to vote for the right thing.
Now I'm on the way going to Zim to vote. Yes, yeah. We are just checking that at least things is going to change in our country. We want peace. We just hope these elections they're going to go well. We don't want violence. We just want a peaceful election.
Everything to change in Zimbabwe. Long time, so everything must change in Zimbabwe. Everything must change. So I'm going home to vote.
It's important for our country and us here in South Africa. We are going back home so that after we vote and our government maybe is going to change, things are going to be fine and our economy is going to be okay.
Zimbabwe's elections is expected to be held on the 30th of July. Nhlanhla Khatlani, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The elders have arrived in Zimbabwe to add their voice to calls for free and fair elections at the end of this month. The international NGO is made up of public figures noted as elder statesmen, peace activists and human rights advocates who were brought together by Nelson Mandela in 2007. They will also be calling on stakeholders to accept the final results. And for more on these, we are now joined via Skype by our correspondent Ephert Musekiwa from Harare in Zimbabwe. Very good evening to you, Ephert. Thank you so much for joining us. We do understand that the elders are now in Zimbabwe already. Do we know who's there?
Good evening. Yes, indeed, I can confirm the elders are in Zimbabwe. They are being led by the current chair, who is Kofi Annan. We also have the former president of Ireland, Miss Mary Robinson, and human rights activist from Algeria. His name is Lakba Brahimi.
So they will be meeting different stakeholders. Is it clear who these stakeholders are?
We understand from their itineraries that first thing tomorrow morning they will meet with President Emmerson Mnangagwa. Thereafter, they will meet the main opposition, which is led the main opposition MDC alliance, led by Nelson Chamisa. Thereafter, we understand they have other stakeholders that they are meeting that include the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. They are also meeting other civil society organizations. Then later in the afternoon, they will have a press conference where they will advise of their deliberations and meetings.
Well, Ephert, the opposition has called for electoral reform, threatening to boycott these polls. Do we know for sure if any reforms are being negotiated at this point?
Well, the last communication that we received from the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission is that there is a body that they set up, which is called the Multi-Party Liaison Committee, where all parties come in every now and then or every week to meet and discuss and map the way forward. And we understand that they've referred all their deliberations to this committee. So the reforms that the opposition have been calling for, we understand they were referred to the Multi-Party Liaison Committee. As to the outcome, we are not yet privy because we haven't received any official update from any official.
Analyze for us, if you can, what a successful election in Zimbabwe would mean, particularly for Emmerson Mnangagwa.
Well, that's a very difficult question, but what I can say to you is that as this election, where we currently stand, is that the opposition has been raising a lot of concerns. They've been raising a lot of alarm regarding this election. They're saying there are a lot of irregularities that are, encompassed in this election, and they've actually gone to the extent that they are calling on SADC, they are calling on the AU to intervene to make sure that this election is free, is credible, and is peaceful. But right now, what we have in their own words is that yes, there is some peace. They are saying the playing field is not even. Surprisingly or commonly, it's only the opposition that has been complaining. Today, President Emmerson Mnangagwa addressed a rally in Mashonaland West Province, where he actually highlighted that the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission is not part of government. It is independent, and what it does is not controlled by the government or by ZANU-PF. So he was basically saying he has no control as to how the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission will run this election. As to what really is a free and fair election, I think this is the first election that we have had. Previous elections that we have had in this country have been marred by a lot of violence. They've been marred by a lot of stifling of the opposition. They were not able to campaign. They were not able to get their messages across. They were not able to access certain areas. They were not able to access the media. But this time around, there's been some relaxation of those stringent, conditions from the ruling party. So really, I think for Emmerson Mnangagwa, the current president, he's been trying, because he's been going around the world saying that Zimbabwe is peaceful and it is open for business. So they've tried to open up. They've even invited observers who have been in the country now for quite a very long time. Some, like the European Union, they've been here for almost a month now. We understand that the SADC Observer Mission will on Saturday launch its mission and activities. We also have the African Union already here. So really, I think that's where the current situation with this election is.
Overall, what would you say the political climate on the ground is? Is there a sense of fear? Is there a sense of anticipation or excitement over these elections?
Well, I wouldn't say fear, because as I highlighted earlier, the opposition, all of them entirely, they've been able to campaign freely. I think Nelson Chamisa has held, if I've lost count, but almost close to 70 rallies across the country. And this is the first time. It has never happened, So the fear element, I don't think it exists. What exists, I think, are concerns that, in as much as they've been allowed to campaign, but the other elements that constitute a credible election are still not in the right standing. They are still not properly constituted. So they are saying that they need ZEC to address the anomalies before they head into the election. The issue with the ballot paper has been a major bone of contention with the opposition, and they've said they wanted to see how it was printed. They wanted to know where it was sourced from. They also wanted to make sure that they get access, or they get their to be able to be present during the transportation, so that they secure the ballot, that there is no ballot stuffing and there is no anything that is related to the ballot paper.
Let's talk about a potential shift in international policy. Are we going to see a pragmatic shift after this election?
Well, it is very interesting in that when Emmerson Mnangagwa came in and became president, we did start to see a lot of foreign, the Chinese, the Europeans, changing their stance, their hardline stance on Zimbabwe. We don't know how or what will happen after the election, because right now I think a lot of people are very skeptical. The market has already started responding. People are not so sure, and you have seen some basic commodities, the prices going up. We have seen the illegal exchange rate really shooting up. So we don't know how the international community will respond either to a Mnangagwa victory or a Nelson Chamisa victory. But before this election, we've actually seen a major shift from the Western powers that really used to take a very tough stance on Zimbabwe. They've come in, they've engaged the current government. They've come in, some of them have actually made commitments. You know, you understand that the British government actually gave Zimbabwe about 100 million to resuscitate some companies. So really, it is a first in a very long time. So we don't know what will happen once this election, the results of this election come out.
You also talked about the issue of fear, that you don't see a fear being on the ground in Zimbabwe. But then Tendai Biti, the former finance minister and a human rights lawyer, did warn that the presence of the military on the streets of Harare proved that Zimbabwe is still a securocratic state. How do this the presence of the army, of the military on the streets play into this?
The report that military were deployed also came from the opposition. When we had a chance to speak to the military, the defense forces, they actually highlighted that they had not deployed anyone either in the rural areas or in the capital Harare. And if you are moving around Harare, you don't see the military, actively involved. Where we are seeing a lot of military being involved is since the Bulawayo bomb blast. There's been a lot of military presence around anywhere where President Emerson Mnangagwa officiates or goes to campaign. You see a lot of them dressed in their uniform and heavily armed, but we haven't really seen them on the streets in their uniforms. We do get reports that there are military that were deployed in the rural areas, but we haven't really actually seen them, or we haven't actually had concrete evidence of their activity in those areas.
All right, Ephert, thank you so much for joining us. That was our correspondent from Harare, Ephert Musekiwa, joining us via Skype from Harare in Zimbabwe.